Hey all, your OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at something a little different. These are two indoor hydroponic gardens, different from what we usually cover, but still I think quite interesting and can be thought of as a smart lifestyle product that can also be a kitchen gadget or a gift idea. And just as a disclaimer, YouTube may compensate me for using the shopping tags in this video. However, this item was purchased by myself, and all thoughts expressed in this review are my own. No one is approving or previewing this video. It is an honest review. It's just if you purchase using the affiliate tags, it will help out the channel. So the first one here, which is a larger box, is the AeroGarden Harvest. It's able to plant 6 pods, and you're able to purchase replacement pods as well that can include plants such as tomatoes, basil, mint. And the concept of a hydroponic garden means that it is planted in just water. This particular system has a built-in pump that will circulate the water that you also add a bit of nutrients in for the plants to grow at a faster rate. And it's a little bit easier to maintain and less messy compared to traditional soil-based planting. The kit also comes with an extendable LED arm that allows it to have sunlight even if you're indoors, even if you don't have a green thumb necessarily, kind of teaching you and getting you a little bit hooked into the process of planting some of your own veggies. And they have larger systems as well that can accommodate even more pods. Even comes in multiple colors to fit different decor, and there's even a farm version which is extra large if you really want to take this to the next level. Some of the more advanced systems out there also come with app compatibility. It gives you a reminder to then exchange the water, for example. This one though, a more basic model, doesn't have that, but there are LED lights in the bottom that should give you an indication if you need to then replace the water or anything is going awry. So it claims to be faster 5 times compared to soil-based planting, claiming on average to take just 21 days to get a full harvest inside that you can use all year long. They also sell a smaller version called the AeroGarden Sprout. It works in the same way, but this one takes up a little bit less counter space and has 3 slots as opposed to 6, so you plant a little bit less, but it can be worth considering if you are in a tight apartment, for example. I'll also mention that there is a competitor called Click and Grow that offers a very similar premise, but these systems actually don't have a built-in water pump to circulate the water inside, and they also tend to be a little bit pricier as well, such as the small version is around $80, which is quite pricey, versus the AeroGarden are often half the price, if not less, when you're getting them on sale. So these are going to be perhaps a slightly better value, but I would say Click and Grow as well as AeroGarden are perhaps the 2 most recognizable names of indoor garden systems. But just for comparison, in this video we'll also do a quick look at the HydroPod. This one here is going to be one of the most cost-effective hydroponic sets you can find, and in fact right now it's going on sale for just around $15 a pop. So if you're curious about this type of planting technology and using again water instead of traditional soil and having a relatively elegant minimalistic appearance, this might be a good way to enter and explore, figure out if you want to buy something larger as a result. However, this one only comes with 1 pod socket, so you can only grow 1 plant. It comes with a basil out of the box for you to use, compared to again 3 or 6 pods in the case of the harvest. Also, the HydroPod here is going to be a lot more simple because it doesn't have a built-in pump either, similar to the Click and Grow, nor does it come with a LED light, so you have to get your own or place it near a window to get that source of lighting. So the simplicity is really what some of these products are selling, not only looking quite neat as a desk decor item, but also you can get them up and running in less than 5 minutes. So let's take a closer look at the AeroGarden first. Packaging here says from plant to plate. They're able to eat maybe in a slightly more healthy way for salads, things like that. You know that you planted everything yourself. You kind of can tell that's the water reservoir tank that the seed pods are then immersed in. The water is continuously circulating, so there will be a little bit of fan noise in the background as a result compared to a completely silent system, but it probably won't be quite as effective or fast in growing without the circulation. So just something to keep in mind. It will automatically turn the lights on and off to simulate kind of the circadian rhythm and remind you when water as well as nutrients are needed. It looks like there's also a sticker here that tells you that the seeds inside, so again, the harvest comes with parsley, basil, thyme, mint, dill, and Thai basil, and it tells you it should be used by this particular date, 2024. So it looks like there's about a 1-year period of when the seeds are guaranteed to still be good in the box. So keep that in mind if you're trying to store this up or also give it as a gift. It's probably best to purchase them fresh to guarantee that the seeds, which again are pre-planted, are going to continue to function and grow as expected. So inside here we have a quick user guide. There's also a few other versions versions of the Harvest, including a 360 model. It still plants 6 pods, but the base is in a circular shape instead of a slightly more flat shape, as you can tell there, just based on your aesthetic preferences. So process-wise, we just need to attach the base, plug in the power adapter, and then pop in the pods. And it tells us to rinse and refill the bowl monthly with cool water, as well as keep the domes on top of the seedlings, protecting them during initial growth. And once it reaches the top of the dome, you can remove that plastic piece. Also indicates that the pump cycle will be on for 5 minutes and then off for 25 minutes as it's continuously cycling. There's also some recipes of different salads you're able to cook or pesto using some of the pods, although it looks like tomato isn't included out of the default package. So in here we have the 6 easy to grow pods, the Gourmet kit, and although very interestingly, it looks like the sell-by date on this internal box is a little different from the one on the outside, as you could tell. That one said, I think, July 2024, but this one says sell by February 2024. So not sure if this was a perhaps mix-up from a packaging perspective, but just something to be cautious of. Definitely good to start using these as early as you can. And otherwise, we have the plant food that you just add a little bit of when you are putting in the water for the tank. And otherwise, we have the aforementioned pods, so all 6 of them look something like this, as well as the separated domes that you can pop on top. And they're also labeled with the corresponding plants as well. Time, mint, tells you the germination time is a little bit different depending on the plant. Some of them will germinate in as little as just 7 days, if not fewer. Other ones may take a little bit longer. And otherwise, we have just the lamp as well as the base itself. So relatively straightforward inside of this cardboard packaging, along with the AC power supply. That'll look something like this with a barrel plug, a pretty decent cable length as well. So the actual Harvest system itself, of course, can be reused. You can pop in new pods once these current ones fully grow out. Speaking from personal experience as someone who has not really done a ton of gardening in the past, this just makes the process a lot less intimidating. The system is otherwise constructed out of polycarbonate plastic, and we have just the base that is actually removable for maybe easier cleaning, and where we can pop in the 6 different pods at slightly scattered positions, so they should all hopefully get an equal amount of nutrients. And when we remove the tape, you can also pop off this section as well for cleaning or popping in additional water and nutrients like so. There's kind of a fill line inside as well. Just keep in mind there is kind of an easy lock at the very back that you have to press down on first in order for the arm to then move higher and lower accordingly. And the arm part here is constructed out of metal. And the base here just features some soft touch rubber feet that prevents it from sliding around. As well as on the back, there's just a power supply barrel plug. And now just as reference, here's the HydroPod, so it should be even more straightforward. Again, it just tells you to experience the process of soil-free farming, including a frosted glass HydroPod. And indeed, on the inside, we have just the pod itself, which is again made out of this frosted glass container, quite compact. Plant food powder, and then just have to add in the water, sweet basil seeds. Now let's do a quick montage or a time lapse of how the pods here will grow over the next couple of days. So there we have it. You can see that everything is actually growing as advertised, surprisingly, even though for a short while there it looks like the curly parsley as well as the mint were just not growing until over a month later. And now even the aforementioned parsley as well as the mint are growing quite well, even reaching higher heights as time goes on, along the mint just kind of peeking out there in the very rear, as well as if we look over the light, you can tell it's also growing slowly higher and higher, even towards the outside of the lamp over there. I would say though, when it comes to the degree of vegetation, the two types of basil up front as well as the dill here is definitely the fastest growing out of the bunch. So you can expect to have to harvest the basil as well as the dill just a little bit more commonly compared to the other types of vegetation, especially basil here. About every 4 days or so, you can cut off about a 1 to 2 inch branch and use it in your food. The aromas of these particular herbs actually being quite strong and again, just delicious to eat. And in similar fashion for the dill, you can tell how these tiny little sprouts just keep on growing up from the roots whenever you pluck one out. And just a couple of days later, it just becomes a much larger stem, almost like a mini forest leaf there. And it's similarly very strong in its taste, but great for different types of cuisine as seasoning. I also say that the tiny little AeroPod here, even though it looked like it was growing much slower towards the beginning, after about a month and a half, it really accelerated, and now we have a pretty large basil stem, also growing surprisingly well. The pumps really aren't distracting at all. In fact, earlier it was completely on, and you could barely hear any noise of the water being circulated. So it's not going to be distracting at all, even in a more quiet space. Now, when it comes to pruning these veggies, there's also a couple of tips that I'll just briefly point out. For basil, take a look at this particular stem, for example, we can see additional sprouts coming out from this section, which means we can cut off and prune this particular leaf off. Here's another example. Slightly further down on this stem, we can see additional leaves starting to grow down here. So we can actually cut off this particular stem as well up top if we wanted to and consume it. So this will actually increase the growth on the basil because instead of making it super tall, kind of like this one here, with fewer leaves in between, if you are cutting it off at a point where more leaves are coming off, they will go outwards into more branches. Which is why with more pruning, you end up with kind of more bushy looking growth, such as this Thai basil plant up front is looking really good. I'll also say that if you cut off some of the branches, you can actually try popping them into water, and here's one quick example of some extra basil that I just was not able to consume since I had so much of it. And in just about 2 weeks or so, the end of the stems will start to sprout their own roots. So plant it into soil and try to develop it into a larger plant. You get a almost lifetime supply of basil in this way. Of course, at a certain point, the prunings will start to lose the strength of their flavor. So generations down the line, you may want to eventually develop new seedlings and start over from scratch for the best flavor, intensity, and aroma. Usually the first stem that pops up has the strongest taste. Now the water refill situation also kind of self-accelerates. The more growth of the leaves that you see, the more water this larger AeroGarden here drinks. So in the beginning, it might have been a whole week or two before you have to refill the tank, but later on, such as in this current state, I have to refill the water tank about even 3 to 4 days in. Similarly, when it comes to pruning the dill, it's actually one where you try to cut off towards the base of the stem, kind of as close to the bottom as possible, because they will sprout out new stems towards the root section as well and then grow slowly upwards, which is why you end up with a slightly stranger looking root, but that doesn't actually matter because it will just continue to grow out smaller mini dill leaves, as you can tell here, coming off and then becoming taller and taller. So the process of pruning there a little bit different. I will say though that the curly parsley, even though now it's growing quite well and it's definitely sprouting more and more, as you can tell they're getting busier at the base, it still has slower growth at the end of the day. And the same can be said about the thyme there in the back, compared to the aforementioned dill as well as the basil, which just grows at a faster pace. So again, vegetation there may take perhaps a week or even 2 weeks before you really expect to get enough to kind of consume in a full meal. But overall, definitely not bad, and I'm just surprised that for a long time what seemed like there would be no growth at all turned out to still be a full harvest and vegetation pretty much mirroring what we saw on the product images of the box. light here is also working quite well, even as a night light, because it turns off automatically after roughly 13 to 15 hours of being on. So if it goes on, for instance, in the evenings around 8 p.m., it will automatically turn off when you kind of wake up in the mornings, just being lit there in the evening hours. And again, just looking quite good, consuming very little power as well. That is more or less it as far as this quick experiment of water-based planting, and I have to say I've been quite impressed with this, and I may even explore more complex solutions in the future. I know it's kind of a strange one for the type of content that we usually cover, but kind of merging the gap between food, farming, and also tech. Especially some of the more advanced units, again, that have capabilities like built-in Wi-Fi, app control, and the ability to kind of remind you subtly if you need to refill it, add more water, things like that. So in this case, it's more of a manual model because of its lower price, but even when the kind of water runs out or you need to add more food, the corresponding lights up front will just start to flash, and once you pop in more water, it has a sensor to detect that the tank has been filled, and then it will stop automatically. And then similarly with plant food, you just tap on this once after pouring in the liquid plant food. So pretty self-explanatory and quite low maintenance, to be honest. Again, this chamber here is where just that water comes in, and there is quite a bit of root growth inside. In fact, even right now, if we kind of peek into the depth here, you can tell some of the roots starting to kind of grow outwards as the plants continue to thrive and consume the water as well as vegetation. I will say though that covering up this portion is quite important because it will prevent any algae and bacteria from growing, since the tank down below is completely dark without any sunlight or UV light from the head over here reaching it. It will prevent the water from getting murky or green as you kind of refill it over time. So that's also why over here in this smaller example, without a covered base section, I had to use a cookie box along with the tissue paper to cover up the base. Otherwise, what I found was if it was exposed in its glass dome, it actually started to form a bit of algae because of the direct sunlight that it was receiving. So covering it up will prevent the kind of growth from happening, and the water will continue to remain clean over time. So you can expect months and months of activity once it grows, maybe up to half a year or so, before you really have to swap out any of these seed packs eventually if you want to try something new, such as growing tomatoes or other salad kits as well. Or of course you can eventually transplant them into soil, again cut off different seedlings, and they will grow off exponentially into more and more of these mini foods for you to try. Actually a very cool way, even if you're limited on space, to have a mini garden in your house, even if you don't have a green thumb. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.